Have you ever stopped to think about what truly happens inside the mind of a racist person? What kinds of thoughts and beliefs lead someone to judge or mistreat others because of race, especially Black people? Most of them do not view themselves as evil. Many genuinely believe they are being logical, defending their group, or simply pointing out what they see as reality. So what does the psychology behind racism actually look like? In this video, we're diving deep into the psychology behind racism, uncovering the hidden beliefs and mental patterns that keep it alive, the moments in history when racism became most extreme, especially toward Black people who is most likely to practice it. What scientific research reveals about why racist attitudes develop? And most importantly, what studies suggest can help reduce it and slowly bring it to an end? Stay until the end, because some of these insights may surprise you and completely change the way you view the world. Let's begin with the core beliefs that often shape racist thinking. Decades of psychological studies show that racism is not always driven by pure hatred. In many cases, it grows from ordinary mental tendencies shaped by environment and life experiences. Social identity theory, introduced by psychologist Henry Tajfel in the 1970s, helps explain much of this behavior. Humans naturally separate people into us and them groups to strengthen their own sense of worth. Even in experiments using completely random groups, participants still showed favoritism toward their own side while treating the other group unfairly. Once race becomes part of the equation, especially Black versus white, that same instinct can develop into genuine racial prejudice. Racist individuals often hold strong beliefs about social hierarchies, assuming certain groups such as white people are naturally more intelligent, hardworking, or moral, while groups like Black people are viewed as inferior. This way of thinking is closely connected to something called social dominance orientation, a personality trait where people favor rigid social rankings and see inequality as acceptable or even necessary. They also tend to score higher in right-wing authoritarianism, which is linked to a strong desire for order and a fear of outsiders disrupting their lifestyle. Most are not consumed by hatred all the time. More often, they rely on automatic mental assumptions known as stereotypes. Ideas like Black people are lazy or dangerous become mental shortcuts people use to simplify a complicated world. Studies show these attitudes are often tied to insecurity, reduced empathy toward outsiders, or a psychological need to defend the image of their own group. They transfer their fears onto Black people and persuade themselves that their opinions are simply realistic or obvious. But where did these beliefs originally come from? The form of racism we recognize today is actually fairly recent in human history. Before the 1500s, prejudice was usually centered around religion, tribes, or cultural differences. The concept of race as a permanent biological hierarchy emerged during European expansion and the transatlantic slave trade. European powers sought a moral justification for enslaving millions of Africans, which led to the rise of racial ideologies that placed white Europeans at the top and Black Africans at the bottom. By the 1700s and 1800s, so-called scientific racism became widely accepted, reinforcing these hierarchies. Some early psychologists also supported these views, describing Black people as childlike, less evolved, or inherently inferior. This was not fringe thinking at the time. It influenced mainstream science, education, and legal systems for centuries. Racism reached some of its most extreme and violent forms in the 19th and 20th centuries. In the United States, even after slavery ended in 1865, the Jim Crow era from the 1890s to the 1960s enforced segregation, racial violence, and a system that kept Black Americans in a permanently subordinate social position. Across Europe, Nazi Germany from 1933 to 1945 turned racist theories into one of history's deadliest genocides. The Holocaust. In South Africa, the apartheid era from 1948 to 1994 enforced strict racial division through laws that separated black and white citizens for decades, even outlasting America's Jim Crow system. These eras revealed that racism against black people was not carried out only by extremists, but also by ordinary citizens who accepted it after governments and leaders framed it as natural, justified, and necessary for protection and survival. The psychological pattern was hard to ignore. When societies reward loyalty to one group while discouraging compassion for outsiders, ordinary people can end up supporting terrible actions while convincing themselves they are morally justified. So today, where does racism remain most visible? Modern global studies reveal a complex reality. A 2025 survey by the Pew Research Center across many nations reported that a median of 34% of respondents viewed racial or ethnic discrimination as a major issue. The strongest concerns appeared in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, Turkey, India, and several Asian countries. In the United States, openly racist attitudes toward black people have decreased significantly compared to the civil rights era. Yet many Americans still believe black communities continue to experience discrimination in everyday life. The same pattern of in-group bias exists across societies. The difference is influence and control. Majority groups often aim it at minorities, especially black communities. So who shows the most racism? Research suggests it is not limited to one kind of person. Under certain conditions, almost anyone can develop racist behavior. Still, some personality traits increase the risk, particularly against black people. Individuals high in social dominance orientation or authoritarian thinking are more likely to hold racist views because they prefer strict hierarchies and resist social change. Many racist attitudes also grow in environments with little contact between groups, where negative stereotypes about black people remain unchallenged. Many of them do not view their behavior as racist. Studies show they often defend it as preserving tradition, protecting jobs, or responding to what they see as discrimination against their own group. The psychology behind racism suggests it is conditioned, not unavoidable. Infants can begin showing preference for familiar racial faces by around 3 months, simply from repeated exposure. Those early biases are then reinforced through relatives, media influence, and socially divided environments. The encouraging part is that the same research explaining how racism develops also explains how it can fade. One of the strongest solutions is the intergroup contact hypothesis, supported by more than 500 studies. When individuals from different racial backgrounds, especially black and white communities, engage as equals while working toward common goals, in schools, jobs, sports, or even digital spaces, prejudice declines sharply. Fear and tension reduce, empathy increases, and harmful stereotypes begin to weaken. In the United States, data from Project Implicit found that unconscious anti-black and pro-white bias dropped by 26% between 2007 and 2020 because of shifting social attitudes and greater interaction. Programs like prejudice habit-breaking exercises train people to recognize and interrupt biased thinking in real time. Broader structural reforms also play a role. Integration policies, inclusive education, and fair systems help dismantle the conditions that continue to reinforce racism toward black communities and other groups. Here's the encouraging truth from psychology. Racism is not permanently embedded in human DNA around today's racial categories. It is a learned pattern rooted in ancient survival instincts tied to groups and perceived threats. Yet it can change dramatically. Open hostility toward black people has already declined sharply in many societies. Unconscious bias is changing as well. When communities encourage meaningful interaction and truthful discussions about history and power, racism begins to fade. The psychology of racism suggests the issue is not simply evil individuals. It involves ordinary minds influenced by historical forces and social systems, particularly in countries like the United States, where black-white relations have been extensively researched. But ordinary people using contact, awareness, and research-backed methods are already helping tear those barriers down. Now that you understand the science, what do you think is happening inside the racist mind, especially regarding prejudice against Black people? Share your thoughts in comments. And if this video gave you a clearer understanding of the psychology behind racism, leave a like and pass it along. The more these conversations are driven by evidence instead of assumptions, the closer society moves toward real progress.